Welcome to Keycloak for beginners. You might be completely new to Keycloak with zero knowledge, or maybe you have some basic understanding and want to piece it all together. In this video, I'm taking you on a journey where you will go from zero to an intermediate level use of Keycloak. In this course, we are breaking down Keycloak step by step. We will cover what Keycloak is and its features, how to install and set it up, mastering realms, users and groups, configuring clients and roles, understanding protocol mappers and scopes, introduction to identity products, and much more. By the end, you will have all the knowledge you need to confidently use Keycloak and jumpstart your journey with identity and access management. Let's get started. In this section, I'm going to explain what is Keycloak and its core functionalities. Keycloak is an open source identity and access management system. By using Keycloak, it is possible to implement authentication to applications and secure services with minimum effort. With the support of Keycloak, we don't need to deal with storing users or authenticating users. Keycloak provides many features including user federation, strong authentication, user management, and fine-grained authorization. I will take you through the available major features. The first one is single sign-on. User authenticate with Keycloak rather than individual applications. That your applications don't have to deal with login forms, authenticating users, and storing users. Once logged into Keycloak, users don't have to log in again to access a different application. This also applies to logout as well. The next one is identity brokering and social login. Once social networks are enabled, user can log into your application via any of the social network user prefers. That can be Google or GitHub, Facebook or LinkedIn, and there are so many social networks are allowed by Keycloak. That is just a matter of selecting the social network you want to add. In addition to social logins, Keycloak can authenticate users with existing identity providers. Again, this is also just a matter of configuring the identity provider in the Keycloak admin console. Other features user federation. Keycloak has built-in support to connect to existing LDAP or Active Directory servers. You can also implement your own provider if you have your own custom user store. That can be a database table or a NoSQL collection. You can create your own custom plugin and connect your custom store with Keycloak easily. Other feature is admin console. Through the admin console, administrators can centrally manage all aspects of the Keycloak server. They can enable or disable various features. They can add or remove users, add or remove clients, and almost all the configurations can be done using the admin console. The next feature is account management console. Through the account management console, users can manage their own accounts. They can update the profile, change password, and set up two-factor authentication. These things can be done using the account management console. In addition to these features, Keycloak supports standard protocols, OpenID Connect, Open Authorization 2.0, and SAML protocols by default. Clustering support. Whenever you test the features of Keycloak application, you can run a single standalone instance on your local machine and test it. But when it comes to the production deployment, achieving high availability is a major concern. For that, clustering is essential. Keycloak has built-in support for clustering. In addition to that, you can create themes as you prefer. By creating themes, you can change the user interface. And also, Keycloak is extensible. You can create custom plugins using Java and plug them into Keycloak server and extend the capabilities of the Keycloak server. Early Keycloak was built on top of Wildfly server, and later they started using Quarkus. Therefore, now it is more lightweight, fast and scalable. And password policies. You can customize password policies. Like you can set minimum password length, maximum password length, whether there should be special characters or not, everything can be configured. That's it with the introduction to Keycloak. I will explain how to download and run Keycloak locally in your machine. I'm moving to the download section. Here you can see the download button. I click on the download button, and with that I was redirected to the downloads page. Here you can see the current latest version is 26.0.7, and you can download Keycloak in multiple flavors like standalone mode and container image. Here I'm going to download this as a standalone server. Here I'm going to download the zip file. Once the download is finished, I visit the downloaded folder. Now I am in the Keycloak zip file downloaded folder. Here we can see the zip file Keycloak 26.open7 zip. Now I'm going to unzip this folder. Keycloak unzipping is complete. We can see the unzipped directory as well. And now I'm going inside that directory. Here I go to the bin folder, which has all the binaries. And since I have a Linux distribution, I'm going to execute this kc.sh file. If you have a Windows machine, you can use kc.bat file to run the Keycloak server. Currently, I have Java 21 installed in my machine. Now I'm going to run the Keycloak server. Here I type /kc.sh start dev. I run the Keycloak server in development mode. In the initial run, it will take a few seconds. Keycloak server is up and running on port 8080. Now I'm going to visit that URL. I have opened my browser. Here I visit the localhost 8080. So since this is the first time I'm going to log into the Keycloak server, I need to create a temporary administrative user. I set the username as temp, password is also as temp, and click on create user. Open administration console. So again I have to re-log in. I was redirected to the Keycloak admin console. Here you can see there's a warning sign. You are logged in as a temporary admin user. To harden security, create a permanent admin account and delete the temporary one. I'm going to create a permanent admin user. Here I visit the users section, click on add user and set the username as admin, and I click on the create button. I'm not sure whether you guys can see that button. Now the user is created, and I go to the credentials section and provide a password as well for this newly created admin user, and disable temporary switch, save the user, save the password, and I go to the role mappings and assign admin roles to this newly created admin user. User also assigned to this new user, and I go to the users section and I log in from the newly created user. I click on sign out. Click sign in. Okay, I was again signed into the users section. Here I'm going to delete the temporary user. Now permanent admin user is the only one in this users section. Let's try to understand what is a realm in Keycloak. In the context of Keycloak, a realm refers to a security and administrative domain where users, application and roles are managed. This realm concept allows Keycloak administrators to isolate and organize Keycloak resources. As an example, now I'm in the master realm. Here there are multiple resources like client, roles, users, groups, sessions and so on. If I create a new realm here, these existing resources are not visible to that new realm. So I think now you can understand realm provides an isolation to the resources of the Keycloak server. You can have multiple realms and you can manage those resources separately. As a best practice, it is always recommended for creating a new realm and using that for securing your application and services rather than using the master realm. I will show you how to create a new realm. You have to go to this drop down. By clicking on the create realm button, you can create a new realm. Here only the mandatory field is realm name. Here I set the name as demo and enabled switch is enabled. And here there's another section called resource file. Keycloak allows users to export and import realms via the admin console. If you're going to import an existing realm, then you can use this resource file section. But you need to keep in mind, if you want to fully export and import a realm, you have to do it through the command line interface. Here I click on the create button. Now the new realm is created. Now I visit the realm settings section. If you want to delete this realm, you can do that using this actions drop down. From here you can delete the realm, Here you can see there are multiple tabs available like general, login, email, and so on. I will briefly explain these tabs. If you want to know the functionalities of these tabs in detail, you can refer to Keycloak documentation. In the general tab, there are some general informations available. Here, as the realm name, we can set any name here we prefer. And here we can see the display name and HTML display name. So the display name is the one what the user will see whenever someone tries to log into this realm. As an example, let me put a display name here. Demo realm display name. Here I save this realm and now try to log in this realm. So here you can see that display name is visible here when someone tries to log into this realm. I'm going back to the realm settings section. Here there's a HTML display name. So instead of adding display name as a plain text, we can provide HTML attributes as well in the HTML display name section. I'm not going through each and every field here. Here you can see the organizations switch. Organizations feature was newly introduced to Keycloak. With this organizations feature, we can achieve multi-tenancy in realm level. These are the well-known endpoints: OpenID endpoint configurations and SAML 2.0 identity provider metadata. Let me show you OpenID endpoint configurations. So this is known as the well-known configurations, and this is the SAML metadata. You require these endpoints if you're going to integrate a third-party client application or an external identity provider with Keycloak application. That's it with the general tab. Let's move on to the login tab. From this login section, you can do login screen related customizations, whether to allow for user self-registration, whether to allow a password reset for the user himself, and whether to make a remember me checkbox available or not. Those type of configurations can be set in this tab. In addition that, you can see here email related settings and user info settings. Next time, move on to the emails tab. Here we can set up an email server for this Keycloak server to use. Keycloak uses the support of an email server for email verification tasks and also user password reset related functionalities. That kind of tasks need to use an email server. So this email server configuration can be done in this section. Next time, move on to the theme section. In this tab, you can configure Keycloak themes. Here you can see there are 3 themes available here. If you add custom themes to Keycloak server using themes folder or by creating a custom themes provider, those installed themes will be available here. From this section, you can select your own theme. Also, you need to keep in mind that these themes will be applied in realm wide. If you want to add a particular theme to the login page of a specific client, then you can add the theme into that particular client using the client configuration section. Next tab is keys tab. Keycloak uses multiple keys for different purposes, including digital signature verification and generation, encryption and decryption. Here you can see the currently available keys. If you want to add your own custom key, you can do it through this add providers section. You can add your own key. Next time, move to the events tab. Keycloak allows to edit most of the user events and administration events. By visiting the user's event settings, we can enable Keycloak to audit user events. Here we can provide an expiration time. I put it as 30 minutes and save. Now on Keycloak will start auditing user events for this demo realm. By visiting the admin events settings, we can allow Keycloak to track admin events as well. Here also I'm providing an expiration time and save it. These all the tracked events can be seen in this events window. I'm visiting the events window now. Here there's no user event yet because this realm does not have any user yet. In the admin event section, here there's one event because we just updated the events configuration. That update is added as an event here. When we created a new user and when that particular user tries to do authentication related tasks, those all the events will be captured under this user event section. Again, I'm going back to the realm settings. We just talk about event section, and next I'm going to the localization tab. Keycloak support different locals. Here you can check the supported locals. It support multiple locals. You can do that kind of local related customizations in this tab. Next I'm going to the security defenses. In this tab you can set different security related options like setting X-frame options header, content security policy, and so on. Those things can be configured here. In addition to that, Keycloak has its own brute force detection mechanism to prevent brute force attacks. Here we can set how to detect a brute force attack and how to prevent it. Next time, move to the sessions tab. In the sessions tab, we can set session idle time, maximum session time, and so on. So you know that if I keep this application without using for a particular period of time, let's say 30 minutes, it will be automatically logged out. Like that, we can set these session idle times and session max time as necessary. So session max time is the maximum time we can use a particular session. After 10 minutes, anyway, the session will be removed and user will be logged out according to these configurations. Next time, move to the tokens tab. In the tokens tab, we can configure tokens related settings, token times, access token lifespan, and so on. Because with this OpenID Connect protocol, always access and ID tokens are generated. We can configure the different attributes of those tokens using this tab. Also keep in mind these sessions and tokens, all these configurations are changed realm wide if we are going to customize them from these two tabs. If we want to customize only for a particular client, we have to go to the client section and customize it there. Next time on to the client policies section. From this section, we can set up multiple policies for clients. As an example, if we want to rotate client secret or refresh tokens, we can set that kind of policies here. Next time on to the user profile. Here we can create what kind of attributes should be in the user profile using this create attribute. In addition to that, we can adjust the properties of these attributes. As an example, now I click on the username, and here we can set permissions, who can edit and who can view, and also do some validations like who can, what should be the minimum length and what should be the maximum length, like that. Those configurations can be set from here. Next time, visiting to the user registration section, we can assign what should be the default roles that should be assigned to new users. We can assign any role for new users. Those things will be automatically assigned. And also we can assign default groups as well. So from here we can control what roles or what groups will be assigned to new users. With that, we wrap up the introduction to realm settings section. Let's move on to users section. I just visited the users section. There's no user in this realm yet. I'm going to create a new user by clicking on the create new user button. Here I'm creating a new user. Username is the only mandatory field. I create the username as demo and demo user, first name and last name. If we need, we can assign this user to a group as well. And here you can see there's a required use actions section. We can set different required use actions for this user. When we set a required use action, this user has to fulfill those actions at the next login. If this is a new user, he has to fulfill these things in his initial login. If this is an existing user, he has to fulfill these things in his next login. I just create the user. Once the user is created, multiple tabs appears. Currently, I'm in the details tab, and now I'm visiting the credentials tab. Here we can set a password for this user. I'm setting a password. We can make this temporary or permanent. If the password is temporary, user has to provide a new permanent password at his next login. Save the password. From this role mappings tab, we can assign roles to this user. There are two types of roles in Keycloak as realm roles and client roles. Those roles can be assigned from this section. Next time visit into the group section. Keycloak supports groups feature as well. We can create a group and assign multiple users to that particular group, and then we can assign roles and attributes to that particular group, and then all the users in that particular group will be having the roles and attributes of that particular group. From this tab we can put this user to Keycloak groups. Next time moving to the consent tab. This is easy to understand just by looking at this description. The consent will only be recorded when users try to access a client that is configured to require consent. In that case, users will get a consent page which asks them to grant access to the client. If the user has provided his consent to a particular client application, that will be recorded here. Next time, move to the identity provider links. If the user is coming to the Keycloak server through an identity provider, or if an identity provider is already linked to an existing user, those details will be available in this section. Next tab is sessions tab. When this user has an active session in demo realm, those sessions will be shown here. Since this user has no active session, there's no session shown here. I will show you the session of this admin user I'm using. I'm moving to the master realm. Go to the users section. This is the admin user. And this is the sessions tab of this admin user I'm using currently. In addition to this sessions tab, from this sessions window also, we can see the sessions for all the users. I'm going back to the users section of the demo realm. We are done with the users section. Now I move to the group section. As I mentioned earlier, a group is a set of attributes and role mappings that can be applied to a user. Okay, now I'm going to create a group. I put the name as demo parent group. Okay. So this group can have multiple members. I'm going to add a member. This is the demo user I just created a few minutes back. And here we can set group attributes. Those are key value pairs. And also I can assign roles to this group as well. Okay, now I have assigned 2 roles to this group, and this demo user has those 2 roles assigned since he is a member of this demo parent group. In addition to that, we can create child groups as well. So we can create child groups inside the child group as well. So here you can see this tree hierarchy. Let's talk about clients. Clients are applications and services that can request authentication of a user from the Keycloak server. Here you can see the client section. This is the clients window. Here you can see in this demo realm, we have a user named demo. If we create a client here to represent an external application that can request the authentication of this demo user, or if there are multiple users, it can request the authentication of any user who resides in this Keycloak demo realm. And now I'm going to create a new client to demonstrate this. Currently I have an Angular application and which is running on localhost port 4200. I'm going to connect that Angular application with Keycloak. After that, Angular application can request the authentication of any user who resides in this demo realm. I'm going to create a new client. I set the client ID as Angular app. I do not touch any other fields. Click next. These configurations are related to OpenID Connect. I disable the direct access grant and keep only the standard flow. The standard flow corresponds to the authorization code grant type. I keep the client authentication turned off since this is a public client. Angular application is loaded on user's web browser, therefore it is a public application and there's no point of having a client secret by enabling client authentication. Therefore I keep the client authentication disabled and then I click next. Here I need to put a valid redirect URI. Once the client application is successfully integrated with Keycloak, whenever a user tries to access the Angular application, user will be redirected to the Keycloak application. Then user will check whether the user has a valid session in Keycloak. Otherwise, it will prompt a login form where user has to provide his credentials, username and password. Upon successful authentication against Keycloak server, user will be redirected back to the client application. So we have to put that redirect URI. Since my Angular application is running on localhost port 4200, I put that value here. And I set the web origin as localhost 4200 and save the client. Okay, now the client is saved and this is the client configuration section. Here you can see multiple tabs are visible. This is the roles section. Here you can create client roles. I will explain about roles in a short while. And therefore, I'm skipping this roles tab, and also I'm skipping this client scopes tab. I'll be explaining both in a short while. Next, the sessions tab. Whenever a user logged in to the Angular application, a session will be created for that particular user and that will be shown here. And this advanced section is a very important section. In this section, you can do fine-grained OpenID connect configurations. Most of the things are advanced concepts, so I'm not going through each one. Here about access token signature algorithm selection, ID token signature algorithm selection, and lots of things are here. And here I'm visiting this access token lifespan configuration part. Here you can see this client session idle time as well. I hope you can remember when we were going through the realm settings, these sections were there as well. When we change these settings in realm level, those settings are applied to all the clients. But if we want only to change that particular setting in the client section, we can change them from here. Currently those are configured to inherit from realm settings. Otherwise we can change it to expire scene and set to any value we prefer. That's what I wanted to show you guys here. There's another one important thing. As I mentioned earlier, this client is a public client, but you might come across situations you have to deal with private clients as well. I'm going to temporarily enable client authentication and make this client a private client. Once we made this client a private client, this credential tab appears. From here you can copy the client secret from this section. If you have to work with confidential private clients, you will have to use client secret as well in addition to the client ID. Now I am going to connect this client with my Angular application. Before that, I need to make this client again a public client. I disable client authentication again and save the client. This is the client ID Angular-app. My Keycloak service running on localhost port 8080 and realm name is demo. Now I'm setting my Angular application. I'm setting the URL here, URL of the Keycloak server, which is localhost 8080, and I set the realm name, which is demo, and I set the client ID, which is Angular app. Okay, now I start my Angular application, which is running on localhost port 4200. Now I visit this URL using my web browser. Here I visit this URL. I was redirected to the demo realms login page. Here I put the username and password of the demo user. Username is demo and password. Okay, and I click on sign in, and I was again redirected back to the Angular application. Now if I check authenticated, yes, it is true. With this redirection, Keycloak provided multiple tokens to this application: access token, ID token, and a refresh token. If you want to learn everything properly, there's a separate video about Angular Keycloak integration. I will put the link in the description. Now I copy the access token and going to inspect that. I visit the jwt.io site. Here I paste the token. Here you can see the body of the token. Okay, now here you can see issuer is the demo realm. Authorized party is Angular application. Resource access, these are the client roles of this user, and these are the realm roles of the user. Realm roles are mentioned as realm access. Client roles are mentioned as resource access. Here you can see the username as the preferred username, given names demo, family name is there, email is there, all the required information are there. So now Angular application is properly integrated with the Keycloak application's demo realm. Now if I visit this sessions tab, okay, here you can see the session. Now there's a single session for this Angular application. username is demo, type regular is so, this is the started time, last access time, and IP address, everything is here. That's it with the client configurations. Let's talk about roles in Keycloak. Keycloak has two types of roles as realm roles and client roles. Realm roles are defined at the realm level, which are global and not tied to any specific client. On the other hand, client roles are defined specifically for a particular client, and those are tied directly to the context of that client. The purpose of having two types of roles can be understood as follows. Realm roles simplifies the management of global permissions across the entire Keycloak realm. Client roles enable detailed application-specific access control. I will further explain this using an example. Assume there exists a company named XYZ and it has two web applications, a sales application and an employee management application. A particular employee of that company may have admin privileges for the sales app, but only basic privileges for the employee management app. Client roles are well suited for handling such scenarios. Since this user is an employee of XYZ company, he can have a global role named employee underscore XYZ to access company-wide resources. Employee XYZ can be created as a realm role. Keep in mind that both realm roles and client roles are designed to make role usage convenient for users. There are no limitations. Any role can be defined and assigned to the users of that realm. Keycloak introduces another concept called composite roles. A composite role in Keycloak is a role that groups multiple other roles into one. Assigning a composite role to a user automatically grants him all the roles included within the composite. Both client roles and realm roles can be configured as composite roles. Additionally, a composite role can inherit from other composite roles as well. That concludes the theoretical discussion about roles. Let me show you how to manage realm roles and client roles in Keycloak. First, I will explain how to create realm roles. Here you can see the realm roles section. Here we can create new roles by clicking on the create role button. Here I'm going to create a new role. Let's name it as XYZ employee. We can set a description as well, that is not mandatory. Now I save the role. Role is created. Now you can see there are a few more tabs. First one is the details one, and second one is the associated roles tab. As I mentioned earlier, associated roles tab is used to associate more roles with this role. Once more roles are associated, this role will become a composite role. I just click on assign role button. Let's say I assign delete account, manage account roles. Now you can see here, once these roles are assigned, this role became a composite role. From the attributes tab, you can provide attributes for the roles as well. Those are key value pairs. And other one is users in role. Here it shows who are the users who are having this role. You can assign this role to groups or users. If you assign this role to groups, all the users of that group will have this role by default. Now I'm going to assign this role to a user. This is the demo user we created before. By visiting the role mapping section, we can assign a role. Here I'm going to change the type to filter by realm roles. And here we have our role XYZ underscore employee. And I click assign. That's it about realm roles. Let me explain about client roles. Let's create a client role and assign to this user. In order to create a client role, I'm visiting the clients section. Here I use my client application named AngularApp. Go to the roles section. Okay, here from this tab we can create roles by clicking create role button. I provide a name here. Let's say AngularApp admin. Okay, as a description as well. Save the role. Once role is created, we can manage the client role in the same way we managed the realm role. We can associate multiple roles if we need and make it a composite role. We can assign attributes and also we can assign users as well. I'm going to assign this to our previous user by visiting the users section, demo user. Again, I go to the role mapping, assign role, filter by client. My client name is AnguLab. Okay, we have this newly created role. I click assign. Now this demo user has two new roles assigned. Now these roles should be included in the access and ID tokens generated for the demo user by Keycloak using the OpenID Connect protocol. In order to inspect these tokens, there are two methods. One method is connecting a client and let the Keycloak generate the token and inspect it using a token inspector like gwt.io. That method is a bit difficult to execute. Instead, Keycloak provides a built-in token evaluator. Using that evaluator, it is very easy to inspect token generated from each client for any given user in the realm. Now I am going to use that evaluator. Here visit the client section. I go to the Angular app, visit the client scopes tab, go to the evaluate section. This is the evaluator. This will show generated access token, generated ID token, and the response of the user info endpoint as well. I'm in the evaluate section of the Angular application. Therefore, you need to keep in mind this will show only the tokens generated by Keycloak for the Angular app client on behalf of the requested user. You can set the user here. We have only the demo user in this realm. Once user is selected, here we can go to the generated access token section. Here you can see the generated access token. Here you can see realm roles, which is in the field name realm access. This is the new assigned role for this demo user XYZ employee, and resource access section has all the client roles assigned for this user. This is the Angular app admin client role we recently created. In addition to that, this user has few roles assigned from the account client as well. Here it shows all the content of the token that will be generated by Keycloak for the Angular app client on behalf of the demo user. Here you can see all the roles are included into this access token. Because of that, the size of the access token will be high, and also perhaps some roles will be unnecessary for the Angular client. If you only want to include roles of the Angular app client, you can do that from the setup section. Here visit the setup tab, go to Angular app dedicated. Here go to the scope tab. Here the full scope is allowed. Full scope allowed means this will include all the roles of the user to this particular token. We can disable it from here. Once disabled, we can select which roles should be in the access or ID token. Now full scope is disabled. Let's inspect the access token again. Okay, now you can see this time only the Angular app admin role is added to the access token. If we need to add any other role, we have to select it from the scope section. I am visiting again the scope section, setup, Angular app dedicated, scope. Here I can assign a role. Filter by realm. I'm going to assign this role. Okay, now XYZ employee role will be added to the access token. But you need to keep in mind, if a particular role should be added to the token, user also should have that particular role. Otherwise, even though the role is mentioned here, this will not be added to the token if the user does not have that particular role assigned. Again, I go to the evaluate section, demo user. Here you can see realm role is added. With that, we wrap up the Keycloak role section. Let's talk about protocol mappers. When a client is connected with Keycloak, upon successful user authentication, Keycloak will provide an ID token or access token if it is OpenID Connect, or a SAML response including multiple assertions if it is a SAML integration. These tokens or SAML responses have multiple attributes. Let's say those things can be first name, last name, email. If we need to add a custom attribute to those JWT tokens or SAML assertions, we have to use protocol mappers provided by Keycloak. With an OpenID Connect example, I will explain how to add a custom attribute to the token using protocol mappers. First, I am going to implement a custom attribute. As an example, assume users of this realm has a custom attribute named tax ID, and we need to include that in the OpenID Connect tokens. Let me show you how to do that. First, I'm going to introduce the new attribute. For that, I have to configure the user profile section in Realm settings. Go to user profile and I introduce my new attribute. Attribute name is tax ID. Display name is also added, tax ID, and this doesn't need to be a required field. Then who can edit? User, can we use admin? And I add a validator as well. Okay, let's say it is an integer. Okay, minimum is, let's say, 0. Maximum is 100,000. And I click create. Now we have our new attribute created here. These attributes are called managed attributes. Now I'm going to add this tax ID to user of this realm. I visit the users section. We have our demo user. Here you can see our new field is added to this section. Tax ID, let's say we will add a random value. Can I save it? Now this user has tax ID attribute with the value. Now I'm going to check whether by default this value is added to the tokens generated by Keycloak for this user or not. For that I visit the client section. I have my earlier created client named AngularApp. Go to client scopes and I evaluate the token. Okay, tax ID attribute is not added here by default. Therefore, we need to add that using a protocol mapper. For that, I visit this setup section of the AngularApp. Now I am under client scopes tab and setup subtab. Here I click on AngularApp dedicated link. There are two options to define a mapper: add predefined mapper or configure new mapper. We can use an existing already defined mapper for a set of dedicated values. You can see here predefined dedicated values: email, email verified, family name, birthday, address, and so on. Here you can see all those things, but we need to add our own custom attribute. Therefore, we cannot do that using a predefined mapper. Because of that, we have to configure a new mapper. I click on configure new mapper, and here there are different ways of creating mappers: audience mapper, audience resolved mapper, like that. Even there are hard-coded roles. We can hard-code roles directly into the token, like that. Here I go and select the user attribute mapper. Map a custom user attribute to a token claim. I put a mapper name. I want to map the tax ID mapper, and the user attribute, which is tax ID, and token claim name should be tax underscore ID. Type is string, that's fine. Add to ID or token, add to access token. Yeah, that's it. And I save the mapper. Mapper is successfully created. Again, I go to the client AngularApp. We created the mapper from this section. Therefore, that particular mapper is created only under this AngularApp client. Now I click on Evaluate tab. I have only one user, demo. And I click on Generate Access Token. Okay, now here you can see my custom attribute is added. Claim name is tax ID, values added as well. That's what we can do using protocol mappers. We have one problem with this approach. Assume we have 100 of clients here and we need to introduce this tax ID attribute to all the tokens generated by those client applications. In that case, it is not going to be easy to go to each application and go to client scope and creating mapper over and over again. As a solution for that problem, there's a concept called client scopes. What we can do with client scopes is we can create a client scope and create the mapper inside that scope and assign that client scope to clients we need. I'm going to show you that one as well. Before that, I'm going to delete my previously created mapper from here. I delete it from here. And again, I come to the Angular app client and going to evaluate it from here, demo. Okay, now the attribute is no longer there since I removed the mapper. Now I'm going to the client scope section. Create a new client scope. I name it as, let's say, tax ID. Here we can select the type of this scope. If the type is set to default, all the new clients created after this scope is created will have this scope assigned by default. If we select optional, all the new clients will have this scope as optional. If it is optional, client has to mention the scope name when it is requesting the authentication from Keycloak. If it is set to none, nothing will happen with new clients. If a particular client need this scope, that should be added from the client configuration section. I set the type as none for this scope. If we want to introduce this scope for all the new clients, then we have to put it as default. I don't need to display this on the consent screen, and I save the scope. Okay, now the scope is saved and we have two sections as mappers and scope here. I go to the mappers and create my tax ID mapper. Select the user attribute mapper, tax ID mapper, tax ID. Here I set the claim name as tax ID from scope, and I've saved the mapper. Now this mapping is created and this mapping belongs to the tax ID client scope. I will explain this section in few moments. Now I move to my Angular client, go to client section and Angular app client, and I visit the client scope section, and here I introduce my newly created client scope tax ID, which is an OpenID connect scope, and add as default. Now I go to evaluate section and select the user demo generated access token, and here you can see attribute is added tax ID from scope. Okay, now we know how to introduce attributes through scopes. There's another one important thing. Let's say if we need to control whether to add a particular attribute or not based on user roles, even that can be done using client scopes. Now again I'm visiting in my newly created client scope. Here I have to search it, tax ID. Okay, now we have the mapper here, and now I visit the scope section. Okay, currently there's no role assigned to this scope. When there's no role assigned, this behaves as a public scope with no restrictions. If we assign a role to this scope, only the users who have this assigned role will be having the attributes visible in the ID token, IDO access token. Here you can clearly see that if there's no role scope mapping defined, each user is familiar to use this client scope. If there are role scope mapping defined, the user must be a member of at least one of the roles. I'm going to create a new role now, new realm role. Okay, let's say since the attribute is tax ID, I will create a role name taxable user. Let's say taxable employee. I just created the realm role. Then I go to the client scopes, search my client scope, and here I assign the role, this realm role, taxable employee. Now this tax ID scope can be requested only for the users who are having taxable employee role. Again, now I visit the client section, go to my Angular app, go to client scopes, evaluate, demo user. Okay, now I check whether the attribute is there or not. Okay, now you can see attribute is no longer there because this demo user does not have taxable employee role assigned. From this section, you can find if there's any role is required for the evaluation. You can see here vector role scope mappings. This taxable employee role is required. Now I'm going to user section and assign the taxable employee role to this user. realm role, taxable employee, assign. Now again I go to the client section and give lab, scope, evaluate, demo. Okay, when I evaluate it now again you can see attribute is added. Okay, I believe now you got a better understanding about how to use scopes and how roles are associated with scopes. With that, we wrap up protocol mappers and scopes in Keycloak. We have come to the end of our tutorial. I will briefly explain the remaining sections. First, I will visit the authentication section. Using authentication section, you can manage and configure different credential types. You can see here there are 3 tabs. Flows tab is dedicated for managing and controlling different flows based on scenarios. As an example, first one is the browser flow. Using this flow, we can control how browser-based authentication is working. Here you can see cookie, Kerberos, ID product redirect, and different steps are there. You can configure different steps from this section. Again, here client section is for base authentication for clients. Here a particular client can authenticate using client ID and secret O, signed GWT signed with client secret O, X509 certificate. We can enable or disable these different steps from these sections. This authentication section is a very advanced section. If you have to do any change, you have to do it very carefully. Otherwise, you will introduce security holes to your application. And we have required actions tab here. Configure OTP terms and conditions. Hope you can remember when we are configuring users, we can set up required use actions. Those actions can be configured from required actions section, whether to enable or disable or set as default and so on. And the last tab is policies. Here we can set up different policies. First one is password policy. Here we can set regular expressions, minimum length, password blacklist and so on. Other one is the OTP policy. One-time password policy, whether it to be time-based or counter-based or number of digits to be there, so on. Other one is web authentication policy. Other one is web authentication passwordless policy. And last one is client-initiated back-channel authentication policy. Those policies can be configured from here. You have to very carefully handle these 3 tabs in order to avoid security issues. Other section is the identity providers section. Keycloak allows to connect with different types of identity providers. Here you can see OpenID Connect, SAML. In addition to that, social login providers such as Facebook, GitHub, Google, Instagram and so on. If you want to connect an external identity provider with your Keycloak server, you can do that from this section. If you want to learn further about identity providers integration, you can check the channel. There are multiple examples related to identity providers integration. Last section is user federation. User federation provides access external databases and directories. Here you can see Keycloak has by default support for Kerberos and LDAP. In addition to that, if you have your own custom use storages, you will have to create custom service providers. That means you have to write your own custom plugins using Java and you can plug them to Keycloak. Once you install that kind of plugins, those plugins also will be visible here. You can use them to connect to your custom usage stores. With that, we have reached to the end of this tutorial. This was intended to be a beginner's guide to help you get a jump start on Keycloak. If you have any question, drop an email or leave a comment. I will address your questions as time permits. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.